In this video, we are going to talk about Zac Fisher, one of my favorites. We just heard from Andrew McDougall, his manager, who appeared on Trade Radio on the Gettables show just moments ago. And I think it opens up the start of one of many conversations around what's going to happen with the Carlton Football Club, our list, and who will be staying and who will be going. So a few points to note from what Andrew McDougall said. Very smart, very good timing. He basically said that he's about to catch up with Zac and have a conversation with him. I don't know whether or not that's something that has already happened or just didn't want to give away too much, but I thought it was very clever. But let's look at the reality of Zac's situation. So the takeaways that came from this conversation were that it's more about opportunity for Zac. Wants to play more football. That makes a lot of sense. There was confirmation that he's had a bit of interest from other clubs. It's been reported that potentially North Melbourne, maybe St Kilda, there may be others there as well. Andrew said that we'd like a little bit more midfield time. That is something that has been on the mind of Zac and I guess his manager as well, and that he would also like to stay in Melbourne. So we know that. Now, Fish. I thought Fish took a step forward in 22, crossed that half forward line, started hitting the scoreboard a bit more consistently, had a few big goals in big games in key moments, which lend me to think that that was somewhere where he would be able to solidify his spot. I think the reality for Fish is that he just hasn't quite been able to solidify himself in the team. There's the situation where half forward may not be working anymore, found himself in a bit of a form slump along with the rest of the team in the first half of the year. Second half of the year, finally got his way back in the team, but it was via the half back line. And that is a place in this team that we have a little bit of depth. I think when you talk about Zac Williams coming back into the mix, that would probably make it harder for Fish to play across that half back line, given who is already there. We're pretty settled. So with him, he's got some versatility. I think he was drafted as a winger, then he moved to the half forward line, played a little bit of midfield time early, half forward line, half back line. So he's never really had an issue winning the ball. He's not quite been consistent at hitting the scoreboard, but I think that takes time. It's not his natural position. I think he's just a player that's found himself in a position, and he's not the only one. There's a few of them on the list now where they're not quite one type of player. But I mean, if you look at a guy like Lockie O'Brien, for example, he's clearly a winger, and that probably has led to his downfall to an extent, given that we've got a plethora of wingmen now. We've got a couple coming in, future drafts. So with Fish, at the end of the day, he's contracted. There was a comment made about how he does love being around the group, loves the group, got close relationships, which you can see. You can see that he loves the group. I'm curious. I feel like it's a situation where, if he wants to stay, he can stay. He's contracted. If he wants to leave, he would have to, be proactive in making that request. So we're going to see what happens with Fish, whether he does leave or not, and what that compensation would look like. I like him. I like his creativity. I think he can stick it out. I think right now is the golden era for this group. I know it's a little tough at the moment. And so, from a selfish supporter's point of view, I want him to stay because I think he can offer the group something. And, you need a list to win a premiership. And he had certain moments this year towards the back end, which really helped us. I think he and Dow, who we'll touch on in another video, they really did help us just get over the line and make the finals series. And so I think there's a space for them. I think it's very competitive. We are now in the window, so there's no room for sentiment. You've got to be able to perform, and if you're not performing, you just won't get a look in. So it's going to be interesting to see what he wants to do. I hope he stays, but we'll see what happens. What about you? What would you do with Zac Fisher? And if you were to move Zac Fisher on, what would you want in return? Because I think that's an important piece. We need to think differently now. If we're going to be losing a player who can play in the starting 22 on any given week, because I think Zac is a player that is good enough to play senior football, we're going to need to replace that hole, however big or small it is. So let me know what you think about Zac Fisher and his situation.